and welcome back to Final Fantasy 15, where our journey keeps going, and my nightmares came true, right? I want to be clear to something. Like, you get this a few days after the stream happens, just due to the nature of it, like, being edited and uploaded, right? And what I predicted in the video I recorded yesterday, which would have been Wednesday, I'm recording this on Thursday morning, is I said yesterday, is like, I get the feeling people are going to be like, when MSQ, like Final Fantasy 14. That absolutely happened in our last stress session. Like, people were like, when are you doing the MSQ? When is this happening? But I'm having so much fun doing other things, like side content, and like plotting the efficient route I'm out on the map, getting my hunts unlocked. I'm now getting bigger ones and all that kind of stuff. That it absolutely happened before it happened as the video released, because if it, you know, the timeline could be like, oh, the video came out and then people like played up on it in the stream. That's not what happened. It naturally happened. So I see you, like, when are you doing the MSQ? And I'm like, this feels a lot to me like the first time I played Assassin's Creed Black Flag. I couldn't give a monkeys about the main story. What I do like is, like, there's a sick chocobo that needs helping. Well, we need to go deal with that, right? Now you've got to go collect the beans. Now you've got to go do this, and now there's mind flayers that are spawning, and now there's like a meteor crater you need to go and investigate. I'm like, well, I do need to go and investigate those things. I do need to see it. But let's get into it, because I did do some story. I promised, people really like, you need to do the story, because the story is at like level 3, and you're now level 24. The MSQ's like level 3. I'm like level 24 or something. I was like, okay, we need to go do some story, because I felt it was happening as well. It took me 2 hours, I'll admit, to get to the MSQ, but we had so much fun along the way. That's what's so interesting about this, is we had so much fun along the way. I got the chocobos working, and actually rode a chocobo, and then discovered there's like a whole chocobo leveling system to get GIGA chocobo. There's a bug in the game that won't let me rename my chocobo, and that makes me so sad. It won't let me type in. No matter what I do, I cannot enter letters. If I do it with a controller, it doesn't work. If I do it with a keyboard, it doesn't work. I did get to change the colors, though, so I've got hot pink Pink Thunder, who's going to rode the plains, and I changed everybody else's chocobo to match. But that was kind of fun. I did, ultimately, I'm going to be a little out of order here, but I did find the chocobo races, which are clearly designed for you to level up your chocobo, because I beat Prompto pretty handily, and then I faced against Gladio, and Gladio has, like, turbo chocobo for some reason, and goes, like, 500 miles an hour from the get-go, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? And it's like, well, you should probably go and level your chocobo. Yeah, you should probably go and do that, because you need it if you're going to win these races. I was like, all right, I guess we're doing that. I will now rent more chocobos to level up my chocobo, so I can beat Gladio, because I'm not going to lose. And I imagine that Ignis is like turbo chocobo. I need mega chocobo in order to win, and I don't even care about the chocobo really, because I have a car. And if I don't use the car, then it's because it's so close I can walk. But we'll get the chocobo started. So that's what we're doing. But on the way, I was going to a city, was the next stop for an MSQ, to see Gladio's sister. And he kept mithering me about it. He was like, when are we going to go see my sister? So I set off on that way. But on the way was the meteor. Now, I was like, I got to stop by the meteor, because I want to see what it's about. The meteor is probably important, and it's standing out, and it's glowing. There's like lightning strikes on it and things like that. So I was like, okay, we got to go see the meteor. But the way they've designed the map is to get to the meteor, you can't run to it. So on the road, I was really close. But you can't get to it because it's like up on mountainous cliffs, so you've got to go round like on a cake, like a swirl on a cake in order to get to it, which added like 7 minutes to the drive. So I was like, okay, well, we got to do that then. So I got in the car, I was like, right, we'll blast some tunes. We'll listen to some classic FF8 bangers on the way. And then I saw a dinosaur cow. I don't know how to describe it. A big boy. So I was like, well, we got to go see this. And this is what this game is. It's like, well, I've got to go see what this is. And compared to 16's open world, which is just the most horrendous open world I've seen in years, because it's just a flat map with clear bowls, whereas like there's probably going to be a boss here. And if you do explore, you might find a chest of 2 gil or something ridiculous. Like 16's world is terrible. This is much better. Much, much better. Is to have like, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? It gives you that Breath of the Wild vibe. What's going on over there? And this is more apparent later, but you can clearly see that 15 was basically, I feel like they made this in 2D, like a classic 2D FF6, FF7 type of map. and then just made it into a 3D world, because the layout is exactly what you would expect in those games. You're just in the world. It almost feels like the upgrade from Warcraft 3 to World of Warcraft. You go from this kind of top-down isometric view to in the world, and that's exactly what it feels like, and it's more apparent later, and I'll get to that. So I had a look at the dinosaur. I knew I probably wasn't going to be able to fight it. I think it was like level 50 something, but I had to check, because you can win nearly every fight with skill. If you recognize the move patterns, then you can win, even if you barely do any damage, which I'm always tempted to do that. But the incidental damage when the level difference is so vast is just a bit too much, because you just get one shot a lot. If like sometimes you can, there's definitely a thing with the combat system where the hitboxes aren't FromSoft, right? They're not Dark Souls, they're not Elden Ring. The hitboxes are pretty huge, and even if a leg of like the dinosaur cow is moving one direction and you are behind it, because you can see the leg is moving that way, if your character is near it, it will just hurt you and kill you. And you're like, oh, okay, clearly I'm not going into the momentum of this thing, I'm behind it, but still it's just going to clip you and hit you because you're near the hitbox or whatever. So that kind of stuff is why they allow you so much potion spam, I think, because they know it's not perfect, it's janky in a little places, and incidental damage is somewhat unavoidable. You can't just sit and hold phase and be like Neo all the time. You have to attack, and sometimes you can just warp strike an enemy as it's swinging at somebody else, and you can't possibly see that from where you are, and you will just get hit. And if the enemy's too high, you'll die. So that was fine. So I left it alone as the game completely broke, because as I got back in the car to continue on my journey to see the meteor, I then get a thing saying Prompto wants to take a picture. I don't mind this. It's like a scenic point or something. It gives you a ton of experience usually. So I was like, cool, we'll pull over. And Ignis was driving and could not turn the car around. And the game soft-locked. Completely soft-locked. It got itself stuck in a loop where you couldn't do anything. Where he was trying to turn the car around and it just kept backing. So dumb. So I had to reload the save to come back. It was the first real... It was a genuine soft lock, though. The game was completely screwed. If I'd saved anywhere else, we would have probably been in, like, lost a lot of progress. So a little wary of that happening. And it definitely an encouragement to save regularly before you get involved in something, because you never know. After a good 7-minute drive, though, a nighttime approach. Like, you get so bogged down in activities that nighttime's coming. So I was like, we're going to get there at night. And there's nowhere there's a campsite here. I don't know what's going to happen. So we'll have to see. But I did eventually make it. But the Imperials, the Empire, has taken over it for some reason, which was interesting. So I ended up having a big fight with a mech at the doors. But I couldn't. It took me all of that gaming day, right, in game, to get to see the meteor, and the doors closed. I was like, it's locked. Okay, we're going with the MSQ. Let's continue with the MSQ. Which I did. I got to a lovely seaside town, actually. It was beautiful. It was beautiful and full of life, full of activity, some really interesting characters, lots of quests going on, lots of food to get, blah, blah, blah. I met up with Gladio's sister, and Jacob, and I want to say Tuto is a little kid or whatever, as the story started to progress. And I went on a tour with Iris. I want to say Iris, but it's Iris, to see the town, which was really nice. And then got to find out there's a dungeon nearby. I haven't done a dungeon since the first one, so there's Royal Arms. And this is where it really stood out. Getting to this dungeon behind a waterfall, it super stood out to me how much this is like. This is an FF7 cave. That's what this is. Bit more verticality, but once you look at it from those eyes, you're like, oh yeah, this is an FF7 or FF6 cave. All the locations where a chest would be in those games is where there are loot. And it totally makes sense. Had a good time in there. It was an MSQ dungeon, so I was a little over leveled. Didn't really struggle in there, but got some more Royal Arms, which is great. And then carried on with the story where we learned about Scarfs. Scarfs is called Ardyn. Definitely a bad guy. And he wanted us to take us to see the meteor. I was like, you're trolling, dude. You're trolling me so hard. You're absolutely trolling me. So I went back I then had to drive with Ardyn and keep him in range. He's got himself a nice little, like, convertible car. Looks cool. Got the swagger with him as he took us all the way there. And then he dropped us at the door. And he's like, well, I'm not going in, but he could open the door. And I'm like, okay, so obviously you work for the Empire. And you let us in. And this is where it was interesting, because you can see where 16 comes from here. So it was all about Titan. This was our fight with Titan. And it was cinematic AF. It was very, very cool. It was. It's not as cool as the stuff with 16, because 16 is just the most absurd nonsense in the world. But it was very, very epic. The scale, again, of giant monsters in this game is done super, super well. But gameplay, 0 out of 10. Awful. Absolutely awful. And now, apparently, I could have done it better. There's a point warp point somewhere where you can do it a little faster. But ultimately, you end up just dodging everything he does by just holding circle. And it auto-dodges for you as he just sort of swipes his dirty fingernails at you. And then it'll proceed on with the story regardless, where you eventually freeze and knock him off. But the gameplay was really bad here. Because it kept giving me tooltips like, Ignis and Prompto can use frost bombs. And I'm like, well, how do I do that? And it's like, well, you don't actively do anything. The game just does it for you in a few seconds. And basically, a lot of the gameplay is just kind of waiting around for the game to naturally proceed. So you can probably... Their idea was probably to drink in how cinematic and cool this was, but all he did was kind of swipe his big arms around. It's a shame, because I was really interested in what was happening here, is that these... I can't remember what they call them now. They're like Ascended or Squeenians or something. But they're you know, they're the primals or whatever. They are very casual about their existence, which gives me real thoughts as to what's going on. Because we've seen Diamond Weapon in Kingsglaive, and it does mention, I heard mention of Titan and Leviathan and Ramu and Ifrit. They all exist in this world, but the fact that Titan caught a meteor crashing out of space and is now permanently embedded, holding it up for some reason, is very normal to the people of this world. That's really curious, because Titan is... In fact, they're just like, Titan, will you chill out? Like, they really almost, like, blasé don't care about this. This monolithic giant is just chilling, and everyone's like, yeah, well, that's where Titan is, right? That's what he's doing. It's like, okay, this guy feels like he could destroy the whole planet. But you guys are just like, Titan, will you relax, right? And yeah, we just need to get away from here because Titan's angry and he's doing his thing. I'm like, guys, this is kind of a big deal. And they're like, no, not really. So I found that aspect of what was going on and how casual people were dealing with this interesting. I found it very interesting as to how okay everybody seems to be, because it almost feels like, well, yeah, of course there's Titan, just as there's, like, cars on the road. It's not strange. It's not weird. I'm like, okay, sure, we'll take it. But the fight itself was really grim. The story developments, like I said, cinematically and the story involvement of this, Luna Freya has been taught to Titan. Titan is trying to communicate with us. We're not getting it. It's giving us headaches, all this kind of stuff. That was really cool. Just gameplay-wise, I was like, this is very disappointing. And I hope it gets better as it goes on. This is obviously supposed to be done probably earlier than I arrived. So maybe it would have been cooler, but it's hard to say because the gameplay was pretty weak. Maybe when the game assumes we have more actual options in our arsenal from leveling up or whatever, that the fights will get a bit better. So I hold out hope on that, for that to happen. But resolve that, Ardyn turns out to shockingly be working for the Empire. I'm really curious as to where the story goes with him, because he kind of rescues you, but he does drop you off. Thanks. Like, it's not like he's capturing you, he's not kidnapping you, although he does impound the car. It's more a case of he's like, okay, yeah, I'll drop you off. Like, right. So you're aware we're the Prince and the Royal Guard, but you're okay with us just roaming the world, getting up to whatever, which is obviously going to be against the Empire. Duh, you killed Pappy. But so what Ardyn's motives are, I assume, are very Kefka-esque. He's after his own personal power gain. He doesn't really care about the Empire or you. He just wants his own personal power. That's got to be his motivation, because he's really just uninterested in... It seems very, very uninterested in the war between... I forget the names of the factions, so I mean, I just keep referring to the Empire as Garlemald, because, you know, they wear the Majestic armor, their buildings look the same. Between you and the Empire. He's not asked. Like, that's very, very obvious, is he really doesn't care. So I assume he's just, like, very Kefka-esque. He strikes me as somebody who's a wizard. I haven't seen him do anything yet, but he looks like a less of a melee fighter and more of a wizard with the big robe and the scarves. So I'm guessing that he's just after some ultimate power. right? That's his goal. He wants to release the Espers or whatever to gain his own personal power. It's a very told story in the FF universe. Even though he's the High Chancellor of the Empire or whatever, he doesn't care. He's really just not interested in that. The petty fights of squabbling mortals is definitely the way I view Ardyn's character so far. So it'll be interesting to see what his goal is. I almost feel, if I was to guess at the story where it's going, I think Ardyn wants us to find probably a lot of the royal arms or grow in our magical power, so he can take it from us in the future. Because it felt like he was leading us to Titan to fight Titan. He wanted that to happen, right? He's like literally delivering you to the doorstep to be like, yeah. You can defeat Titan. You're linked to this with your royal bloodline or whatever. So I want you to go and defeat Titan because perhaps the primals or whatever can actually put a stop to his plans. That's what it felt like. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him somewhat encouraging us to go and fight other monolithic creatures in the future, because he kind of wants us to do that to gain strength and power so he can take it later. That's my current guess as to what's going on. As for after this, I'm carless and poor, but I've got chocobos, so I'm good. I should probably continue the MSQ, so I'd probably get the car back. I don't know, man. I'm right in the middle of like a ton of side stuff. Like my side quest thing is getting better. So far, still having so much fun. Still not touching fishing. That's where we're up to. What happens next? I have no idea. Probably get the car back and then something. I assume we have to find Luna Freya sooner or later. So we'll see where that goes. All right? So we'll see you in a bit. Bye, guys.